Last but not the least, to wrap up our conference discussion, we have a high-level conversation on how AI is transforming business infrastructure globally. Help me welcome our moderator, Ms. Margarita Kadochnikova, the head of PR and global events, Immunefi. Meanwhile, I also request the hospitality team to please set the stage for the panel round. Can we please hear it up for all? I request Mr. Tiago, Henriques, heads of AI, ML technology practice, Google, to also please come up on stage. We can take a picture till then, please. I call upon the moderator as well as our first panelist up on the stage. And the third panelist, Mr. Elyes, a technology and digital leader, head of digital and delivery, EEA and Co. Can we have a huge round of applause for the team, please? So sorry for the stage arrangements being late. Please have a seat. Sorry to miss out on that name.
Hi everyone. So my first question is, AI is no longer just a tool, but a foundation of modern business infrastructure. So what is this single biggest change AI has forced organizations to make that allows us to use?
Good afternoon, everybody. About the challenge. Globally, I think all of us who were discovering have a degree, right? So same thing for validation. When we think about it, design and range of new technology coming when it comes to AI, and especially from industries, as well as from, I would say, from best practice perspective to ensure that so, in my opinion, again, that's the most, I would say, challenging thing that the organization is facing. It's all the pressure that they have to put to use AI in their day-to-day basis and their operations. And their operations.
I can talk about it. Technology and how long it takes for things to actually get to work. I don't know if those of you remember the Y2K thing, where everyone's like, the ATMs are going to stop. And I'm like, but only 10% of ATMs were online at any one time at that time. All the rest was batch processing. So if you think about AI, what's happening right now is, for business, everyone's rushing. because we don't want to be last. We don't want to be left out. We don't want our shareholders to miss us. So we've got to rush and have AI. But actually, the really compelling use cases for AI so far are within the coding and the computer industry, and they're within search like ChatGPT for individuals. There's not a lot of good business applications yet, and they will come, and it will become like online and everything else. So the greatest problem actually facing business today is people's response, and the business planning cycle around AI is completely emotionally driven. It's human emotions driving the adoption and what to do and the need to say things. And the final thing I would just say on that is you have to remember, when a drug goes on the market, there's years and years of testing. When a new aeroplane flies, same thing. Cars go through crash testing. I've been in the IT industry since 1977, right? So, and I've done a lot of things in the industry. In our industry, we don't test. There are no legal requirements. There's no regulation. It's not like banking or drugs or any of these things. There is no control over the IT industry. We're not responsible to anyone when there's no oversight. So if we tell you that AI is going to fly you to the moon tomorrow, we're allowed to do that. We can charge you $1 million for that and you can pay us. There's no consequence, right? None of this stuff has to be tested. No one's responsible for anything. So business really needs to understand that. Of course, this is one of the greatest opportunities ever, but my thing to everybody is just remember all the ways for question yourself in business. Am I having an emotional response to the fear of missing out or the fear of change, or have I actually worked out a real business case? If you can say yes, you've got a business case, investors like me are interested, otherwise we're not. Long answer, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll be brief. I think a lot of things changed in the last 2 to 3 years with the advent of Gen AI. I think the first thing, if we look not only at organizational level, I think if you think about day-to-day life, of course, people started to think about AI as a day-to-day tool. And the main reason for that is, of course, it started with consumer apps, as were mentioned before, but also people start to really see what they can do with AI, because they can interact with it in a natural way and can do a lot of things, from talking to it, summarize, and so on. So that's the first piece, because before it was still quite siloed, right? Machine learning was primarily used to calculate how likely you're going to lose a customer in 3 months, how much sales forecast you can do per office, and so on. So I think that's the first thing people, society-wise, start to see the value there. On the organizational side, which is closer to my work in the day-to-day with large enterprises to unicorns and scale-ups, we really started to see, as mentioned before, it started to become a boardroom topic, sometimes by just noise or hype. That's fair, but as time moved, people really start, okay, this is serious, the transformation is quite important, but also how I'm going to shape my business with this fantastic technology, and what are the top use cases that might give me an uptick in different areas of business, or make me even think about new business models. That's on the business side. On the more technical side, which is of course closer to my heart and my day-to-day job, what we have observed is organizations, governments start, of course, first to get excited with the technology, then they go play with it. So there's been a lot of POCs, but we started to really see that many of those start to converge into production use cases with real scale. And that, of course, varies a lot by industry and segment, B2B, B2C, and that's still evolving as the technology itself also evolves, but I always remind people to go still back to the basics, what is the business problem and how the current technology can solve, and how faster it can solve compared to maybe 3 years ago before Gen AI was around.
Great. So my next question is, from your experience, what is the biggest barrier to AI adoption at scale? Technology limitations, data governance, talent shortage, or organizational mindset?
Anyone wants to go first? I already have the mic. I could talk about this one for hours, but I'll be brief to make sure that we go around. So I think the first point goes back to what I was trying to mention before, is making sure that people start with the why, right? The technology is fantastic. I'm a technologist. I love the capabilities, and I have no doubt the massive impact in society return that AI and Gen AI will have next years. But when you go and sit in your corporation, your government, your organization, is really go back to the basics. And it was mentioned this morning, it's not a genie in a box. It's powerful technology, but you really need to understand what are the challenges, what are the pain points, what's the strategy, as was also addressed in the previous presentation, and go back to the KPIs, what I'm trying to address. So I think that's definitely the number one. I'll go there. The second one is really about the pace of change. And of course, I guess everyone knows that every week there is some progress in this space, a new model that seems better than the previous one, which of course is very good for driving innovation, but of course I think no company can address changing a model just every week. So I think the most important piece in my experience is having very solid foundations, regardless how the technology moves. And that, again, for technologists means that you have the platform or the foundations in place to make sure that you can underpin tens or hundreds of use cases around the time. But the most important piece for me is still the basics of AI machine learning, which is how can I measure this system? What's the evaluation I have in practice? What those evaluation means to my business problem, and make sure that it's automated. If you cannot automate, you cannot measure, and you cannot compare how that technology is evolving. And then again, because some of the presentations were quite technical, I'll go there, is once you have a Gen AI system live, which requires a lot of things, there was a lot about security here, there's a lot about responsible AI, there's about a lot of guardrails that you need to put in place, but once you have that system live, is how can you measure it? How can you do observability on top of AI, which of course is very different to maybe 2 or 3 tiers application as in the past. So those are the ones top of mind. Make sure my panelists have other topics.
Yeah, I mean, I would think in my experience it's mostly organizational, you know, this is the mindset. People don't have case studies of what works and what doesn't, and people don't have experience. And particularly, you know, when you talk about, you know, executives making decisions, human beings learn incrementally, they don't have any experience of this. But I think, again, you've got to remember that AI is a very unusual industry opportunity in that there are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars being spent because people learnt from things like Google and so on that you can spend massive amounts of money to build a technology and get a lot of interest and a lot of users before you actually charge anyone for anything. And it's all that sort of land grab. It is all the hype and the positioning. No one's, you know, at a general business level, like who's read a case study in any reputable business magazine of any real good, you know, stunning, like they're always the kind of interesting, cool, you know, consumer apps, or somebody did this, or somebody's made a fake human, you know, call center person or whatever. But in terms of really compelling business cases, they're not there yet. But that's not because AI can't do it, it's because the AI industry, which, you know, is 5 rich American men, you know, is focused on, you know, building a land grab, building a lot of, you know, position and everything else. I would say that actually the AI industry, it's not, the people making AI, it's not important for corporations to use it yet. You know, that's not what, you know, in the IT industry, we don't need companies to be adopting it. No one cares why corporates are or aren't adopting it, because it's not important. That's not where we're up to in the cycle. Where we're up to in the cycle is making sure that, you know, depending on which AI I am, you know, if I'm one of the 5, what matters is that every human being in the world has heard it 3 times today like Coca-Cola, that everybody believes that this is what's coming, and that lots of people are going to buy my stock and everything else. You know, it's a land grab thing. At some stage, of course, it will matter that $10, $11 trillion turns into real-world applications. But the biggest barrier is that the people making it aren't ready yet because it's not important. It doesn't matter whether anyone uses this stuff for anything that makes money because those businesses aren't making money. You know what I mean? We're too early in the business cycle. Once it gets to the point where somebody says we've invested $1 trillion in this AI and now we need to make a return, not a stock market return bubble, but like we actually need to sell something, get paid for it and make a margin, then there'll be a focus on who can we get in the corporate world to pay for that, and there'll be a big focus, and then we will solve the problem of corporate adoption. It's just, so I don't think there's a problem or a resistance, I just think we're too early. We're way too early in the cycle. People think that we're halfway through the AI revolution, we're about 1%.
I should have took the mic first because they've said everything. So I think, again, when we think about what is preventing the different organizations to really use AI at scale, I think, Tiago, you've mentioned a couple of technical points that are very important. I might maybe add the point about related to data readiness in the organization. We all know that garbage in, garbage out when it comes to specifically to AI. So if the organization, they don't have the right governance in place, their data is not clean, it's not ready, it won't help them to, it will definitely stop a little bit their ambition in terms of deploy AI. But in addition to that, let's be very transparent, and maybe I will ask the audience here. Let's say if you have an AI tool that is ready to be, I would say, released to your clients, would you take that risk and release it to front end, to your client? I'm seeing some heads saying no. I really feel that, to your point, Michael, I think as professionals, even as clients, as organizations, we are not ready yet. And yes, we need a little bit more time to gain trust, to have evidence that that wonderful tool, that very promising tool is ready and will not cause harm to our reputation, no loss of data, etc., etc. So to me, that's what I would say is really stopping the organization to deploy AI at scale. And maybe one last point, and I was discussing with one of my clients. He told me that they had more than 200 POCs related to AI. It's a big company. And then I've asked how much, I would say, you were able to push in prod. Guess what? 0. So I think everybody is very curious and is building that trust, double checking to ensure that everything is, all the, I would say, T's are crossed and I's are dots, to ensure that there is no risk when it comes to deploying the AI tools to either internally to their operational teams or externally to their clients.
That's some really great points. So, with AI now embedded in critical systems, how should companies rethink cybersecurity and risk management? Is current infrastructure prepared for AI-driven threats?
I think, well, look, that's not my area of expertise, so I can't say too much about that. Yeah, I think, look, the problem with cybersecurity is the horse is kind of bolted. I mean, every week you're hearing, and this has got nothing to do with AI, just generally the fact that, you know, data is being hacked left, right, and centre. And then it's really interesting, though. I had a very interesting experience 2 weeks ago. I was in Abuja, in Nigeria, and I was about to check in to board a plane, and there had been an IT failure where my record locator had been separated from my ticket, so you can't board. And what happened, because I was in Abuja, is every time they tried to reassociate my ticket with my booking, the AI at the airline central office detected that it was a fraud. So eventually we got the station manager, eventually the pilot came off the plane, and eventually the plane left without me with an empty revenue seat, because at head office, 20 IT people could not combat their AI, which was detecting the fraud. So there the problem wasn't, the problem there wasn't actually the lack of cybersecurity and somebody hacking, it was the protection against it. And they were using these fantastic tools to detect that a last-minute ticket change in Nigeria, for a first-class ticket meant there was some problem, except that it wasn't. And so I'd never thought about that before, how it works in, like sometimes in trying to protect ourselves, you make it worse. So that's my only comment, because I know nothing about cybersecurity. I know it obviously doesn't work because of the failures every day, but I don't know quite how that, in an AI world, I presume my AI is better at blocking your AI than talking to someone else's AI. And in the end, we won't even know if there was a security breach, because who would tell us, the AI?
Also not a cybersecurity expert, but I can definitely dive in. Of course, cybersecurity is a top priority also for any company execs, and in that space, from Google Cloud perspective, there's been just a lot of activity on that space before AI, and now, of course, with AI. So the portfolio in the family there is quite broad. I'll not kill you to describe, but important pieces like Mandant for threat intelligence, which Google acquired several years back, if my memory is not mistaken. Also our SCIM, which used to be called Chronicle. VirusTotal, those are all digital assets and properties of Google that Google also exposes to Google Cloud customers. Very important on helping organizations to mitigate a lot of the cybersecurity space. But connecting to AI, which of course is my area of expertise and passion, is we really see many of those products to get moving very fast because of leveraging AI capability. And behind that, of course, relies on those models, primarily in our world, the Gemini model, but also other very powerful models, can really automate a lot of the cybersecurity tasks to detect earlier threats and to prevent them or automate the actions that need to be taken. So that's an example. So we see companies with GSOCs, which sometimes like to use those products or other ones, but we also see the ones that are more tech savvy, who really want to build, to leverage the building blocks, which in the end of the day combines a lot of big data, a lot of logs, as you guys probably know better than myself, and a lot of smart models that can, again, detect a lot of phishing and many other use cases that the Gen AI can predict better or faster than maybe a few years ago. The last piece I'll mention there, since we are in the UAE, we also announced back in April, and I think that goes closer to your question, a very large and strategic partnership with the UAE Cybersecurity Council in Abu Dhabi, where the idea is exactly to share threat intelligence, as I mentioned before. Second part of the program is really around upskilling technical skills on the government side. And the third piece is even a joint center of excellence where the two entities, Google and the Cybersecurity UAE Council, will be working together. So that shows how we really play very serious in that space, and that includes here in the UAE as well.
So, in my opinion, from a cybersecurity perspective, AI is yes, it's a threat as well as a solution for many use cases. And let me maybe talk to you about a specific scenario that I've heard about in one of the conferences, where imagine that there is a project where I would say an employee from the financial department receives an invite, a Teams invite, and guess who's there on that I would say, Teams conference or Teams meeting? There is the COO, there is the CFO, there is the head of procurement, and there is him, that employee from the finance department. And guess what? Everybody is asking him to immediately and providing him a very, I would say, specific description about the escalation that they got from their client, and asking him to, I would say, pay that specific invoice right away. And guess what? It was an attack. So nothing was real except himself. All the rest, it was a generated, I would say, a generated scenario with, I would say, actual information about a specific project. They were able to generate the same voice as well as video from the different executives. And that poor employee, he was just looking at all those faces, asking him to immediately invoice or pay that invoice. Guess what? He will do it, right? So that's exactly where we need to think when it comes to cybersecurity and in the context of the AI in the context of cybersecurity. Again, in my opinion, it will become an AI versus AI. A bad AI versus a good AI. One is protecting the organization, and the other one is trying to I would say, to hack or to damage the organization. So yes, in my opinion, AI, it's a solution to protect us from specific threats, but it's also a tool that also we should keep in mind that it's also a tool that the hackers that have also handy and they can use against us.
Great answer. So many companies struggle to prove ROI on AI investments. What metrics or success indicators should leaders actually track to evaluate AI's business impact?
I was smiling, Margarita, when you are asking this question, because again, I think it's one of the most recurrent questions that I'm hearing these days about the ROI of AI. But let's maybe take a step back and think about why I would say executives or C-level are asking about AI, about ROI. And again, is it the right question to ask? I think, in my opinion, when we talk about an investments ROI, it's a very legitimate and very, I would say, typical questions that any CFO or any executive gonna ask. I'm gonna invest X number of dollars, etc. How much I'm gonna have in return? It's a very legitimate question. So it's important that, in my opinion, since day one, when you're gonna design or we're gonna invest money, you think about the impact that AI gonna have and measure those before and after. Do your benchmark before and after and try to compare how much you were able to gain. But again, as I've said, but what if we think a little bit differently and not only about ROI? Let's think about soft metrics. Let's say like employee engagement. How many of us wants to work at Google, for instance, because we know that we have AI tools, or in the big tech, because we know that they do have AI tools. So AI, nowadays, employees are expecting to have AI tools and are expecting to have that capability at their disposal to be able to use. Or maybe let's think about other metrics. For instance, time to market, decision-making velocity, etc. There is a lot of other metrics that, in my opinion, it's more interesting to measure in order to see what's the impact of the AI investments into organization. And again, because the CFO has the money and they need their ROI, so for sure you need also to provide them the ROI calculation about your investments.
Thank you. Yeah, to be honest, I haven't seen any examples of, what I would call real ROI in a commercial sense, other than the stock price of AI companies. But what I would say is exactly what you're saying. There are other measures. So I think, if you think about what AI is currently very well developed at, things where you're either positively or negatively shortlisting, where there's a lot of social benefit in doing that well. So a good example is when you're applying for a visa for a lot of countries nowadays, you can get an electronic visa almost instantly. That's because AI is being used very, very well to say that, less than 1/10% of people are the people you want to screen out. And so you very quickly look for the attributes of that application, and then you punt it aside for further analysis. Maybe it goes to a human. But so in this, in security, you see the use of all sorts of predictive AI around the movement of people, who's allowed into things, who's not, who gets the pass. And again, it might be the opposite, like, screening for an employee where you want to, where unlike a visa where you want to give it to most people, it might be the thing where you want to say no to most people. And so there may be an ROI on that in that it's reducing cost, but probably the ROI is you're providing a better service, you're having more effect, and and there's real social benefit to a lot of those sorts of things. Directing resource when you need it in emergencies. I think within the first responder community, within a lot of government applications, which aren't always talked about because often they touch on security things, but some of the best ROI I've seen is actually the use by governments around, quality of government delivery and quality of the service experience for citizens. That's actually the best ROI I've seen.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important question. As I said before, should be always asked in the beginning before jumping into starting yet the pilots or AI project. Being said that, again, we see really massive interest and demand from organizations, companies, governments to really apply Gen AI, and of course that requires ROI. I want to just walk you through a few examples. Of course, those are not pure ROI numbers. There are more business metrics impact, which in the end of the day should influence ROI. But what we see top line is, of course, many of those, especially Gen AI capabilities, in the end of the day, they either increase efficiency of existing business processes, as mentioned by Michael, or of course impact companies on being more effective operationally or increase their revenues. That's, I think, the top line. We actually published, I think, a month or two ago, a blog post that talks about 1001, and I'm not making up the number, it's really 1001 practical real-world use cases, right? And those, if you go through that list, they have a company name, a brand that probably you're familiar with around the world, and what kind of use case they implemented, and some of them they expose as well what was the business impact. So I say that because it's not just we see a lot of interest, we really see companies applying Gen AI in production at scale and having impact there. Just a couple of big ones that I remember from memory. I'll start maybe with Puma, the shoes maker company, again, a global company, when they started to use some of these creative models to generate images. So for example, if they have a new model, they want to sell it in Japan, maybe they want to take the picture, the existing picture of the shoe and put the background with the Mount Fuji. That allowed them to be much faster. And in their case, their online sales, the CTR, which is click-through rate, improved, I believe, 10%. On the same space, Heinzkraft, which is the company that makes ketchup, their marketing campaign generation moved from 8 weeks to 8 hours. That's, I think, a massive productivity or cost efficiency. Again, I can go on and on, but we really have exposed a lot of those metrics, and happy to share offline if that's relevant to any of you. And the last thing I would say is, of course, very different by industry, use case by use case, and country by country. So don't expect someone tells you it's a 5, 10%, it will depend. And sorry, the last one I wanted to mention is on the conversational sides. Love Holidays in UK, a company, one of the leaders in online booking. In the COVID time, they saw 55% of the customer interactions with Gen AI to be fully successful, with needing to escalate to a human, which again, I think is a very significant business metric.
Thank you. So fast forward to 2028, what part of today's business infrastructure will be completely transformed or obsolete because of AI?
Can I keep the mic? Okay. So actually, we have not mentioned the word agentic AI in this panel, which I think partially answers your question. Of course, during the day you heard and saw some details of agentic AI. I really think that's one of the most tangible ones. I will not say that it will make obsolete the business infrastructure, because business infrastructure is very different for every company or organizations, for CRMs, ERPs, databases, and so on and so on. Of course, that stack doesn't go away. So what we see on the very short term is, of course, all those software vendors, many of them we actually partner with. They start to either leverage Gen AI or infuse Gen AI in their applications. So they'll need to modernize and, of course, be more efficient doing whatever they do already. But the piece that I'm more excited, and again, the last 6 to 9 months, I'm sure you've heard the word agentic AI, is, as Michael mentioned, is really the impact it can have in a business when you think about end-to-end business process or government process. Because in the end of the day, I think the visit was a good example, asking for a credit card increase, processing an invoice and detects things that are compliant with what I do, and a lot of those documents that usually require many steps, some of them by different software, some of them with or without humans, they can be fully automated end-to-end, and that's where we've been investing a lot on that platform. Just to finalize, the question I always get is, okay, but that's still very siloed. It's true, those pieces of software are siloed, but that's why, from our standpoint, we've been investing first on getting agentic capabilities in the hands of the enterprise developers, but also we launched the protocol also in April, called Agent to Agent, which in the end of the day is actually a consortium with many companies, including Salesforce and many other ones, which we ended up to donate to the Linux Foundation, so it's open out there. And the ambition there is that it's just a language, the same way that we talk one language between each other. The agent should also be able to query another enterprise system, ask which system are you, what can you do, and make sure this agent to agent will be able to do a completion of those business process in an agentic way. That's in a nutshell the way I see it.
I think for me, if you think about maybe not what's going to be the most changed about business infrastructure, but the most changed about business is, one of the reasons why business everywhere loves English law is English law has this beautiful concept that a company is a natural person. It actually exists as a sentient being. But of course, there's no such thing as a company. There's only human beings, and they organize themselves as a company, as a religion, as a political party, as a family, whatever. But, the corporations have, incredible value. You can trade and buy their shares and everything else. If you think about the logical conclusion of the application of AI to everything, over time, and we've seen this with online businesses where anyone can put up a web page and, it becomes easier and easier to start a business. You build an app, you get it hosted on Azure or AWS, the advantages of big traditional businesses, having the access to credit and workers or distribution or outlets or, some of in the physical world, but particularly, in the services world where there's so much value. I think one of the things that might happen, if it's all about using the right AI tools and the right widgets, maybe a company isn't the only thing that's driving things. Maybe it's more like collections of individuals. Maybe it's like before the Industrial Revolution, where you had tradespeople who had particular skills, but they all worked for themselves, right? For the landowners. I think the biggest change to business might be the actual nature and legal status of business. You might not need to be a huge, large corporation that does things. Everybody might be their own corporation. I have no idea whether I'm right, but that's where I think the biggest challenge and the biggest change to business will be, is that business itself will actually change the form in which it exists. Remembering, as I say, there is no such thing as a business, it's just an organizational concept of humans.
So since I don't have a lot of time, I'm going to try to be quick. When we think about, let's say, what's going to happen in 3-4 years, first of all, we're going to have more data. We're going to have also more computer power. And then, I would say the tech giants will be more, I would say, they will be able to develop a better and more accurate models. So let's take a few seconds and think about what would be the impact on the different organization. And maybe let me take 2 examples, one from an internal operation perspective and one maybe for more customer-facing example. I don't know if you heard about, I would say, Amazon model, where you shop and they ship to you, right? So you scroll, you pick what you want, and then they will ship it to you. Imagine if they do have enough data about you, about your behavior, about what you need, so they can accurately predict what you need. So their model gonna change from ship is to ship and shop. So somebody gonna ring your bell, and they're gonna tell you, you need that swimming suit. And guess what? We're gonna have it just in front of you, so you're gonna buy it. So that's one of the examples where concretely how it can impact I would say, the business side. And from an operational side, I think we start already to see it. I saw a Deloitte report related to it where they've said that with AI, it's impacting more and more the entry-level jobs, where from today, for those, I would say, less complicated jobs or tasks, guess what? AI gonna do it. So maybe in the future, we don't need an HR department. We're going to have just an AI resources department. And our job will be to manage agents. And maybe half of us won't have jobs anymore, and we're going to find something else to do. So in my opinion, those are 2 examples that I see. And I know maybe they are a little bit extreme, but definitely that's how I personally see the impact of AI on us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Can we have a huge round of applause for the discussion that just happened? Such a high-level perspective on artificial intelligence and its impact on business worldwide. Thank you, team, for the thought-provoking discussion. It's clear that AI is shaping the way organizations operate at every level. Can we have a huge round of applause for the team once again? Thank you so much. The most awaited time is here. Before that, story time. 2 engineers were working late one night trying to fix a bug that kept crashing their system. After an hour of frustration, one finally said, you know what? Maybe the issue isn't the code. Maybe the issue is how we are thinking about it. Then they stepped back, rethought the entire logic, and within an hour, the bug was gone. The project went on becoming one of their company's biggest success. Moral? Sometimes innovation doesn't come from more coding, more strategy meetings, or more coffee. But it comes from thinking differently, and today we are here to exactly celebrate that. People who challenge the obvious, rethink the routine, and build the future one idea at a time. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure once again to welcome you all to TechNext AI and Cybersecurity Summit 2025 Award Ceremony. Can we give it a huge round of applause for this, please?